Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer because we've got a seriously mind-bending biological mystery to unravel today. We're looking at how your memories, yeah, the ones in your head, might actually start all the way down in your digestive system. I know, it sounds totally sci-fi, right? We've always thought of the brain as this isolated, impenetrable fortress just sitting at the top of the body, calling all the shots. But cutting-edge research is completely blowing that assumption out of the water. It turns out the microbiome in your gut is intimately connected to exactly how your brain stores, processes, and retrieves information every single day.
So, we're kicking off our detective story with a massive, kind of jarring question. Is it biologically possible to transfer cognitive decline from one body to another? For decades, we've thought of memory as something locked away exclusively in the neural networks of our skulls. It's personal, right? Fixed right there in our brain tissue. But what if the blueprint for that cognitive state could actually be physically moved from one organism to another, just through the microbes in your gut?
Which brings us to Section 1, a surprising memory transfer, the Alzheimer's experiment. To answer that massive question we just posed, we really have to look at a scientific breakthrough that completely shatters our preconceived notions about where memory actually lives.
A truly groundbreaking study published in the prestigious journal Brain revealed something just genuinely astonishing. Researchers from King's College London and University College Cork successfully transferred Alzheimer's symptoms to healthy young animals. Now, how did they pull that off? Literally by transplanting fecal matter, specifically the gut microbiota, from human Alzheimer's patients directly into these healthy subjects. And you know what happened? The young animals quickly developed severe memory impairments. And what makes this so incredibly shocking is just the speed and severity of it all. This wasn't some gradual, age-related decline. It was a profound, immediate shift in cognitive ability triggered entirely by dropping a new microbial population into their digestive tracts.
The absolute crucial point here is exactly what Professor Yvonne Nolan explains. She noted that this microbial transfer physically halted the growth of new nerve cells in the hippocampus, which is your brain's primary memory center. To really grasp this, you kind of have to remember that for the longest time, science thought adult brains just couldn't grow new cells. But we now know that neurogenesis, the literal birth of new neurons, does happen, especially in the hippocampus. So the fact that a population of gut bacteria from Alzheimer's patients actively shut down that growth in a completely different, healthy young animal, that is a direct causal link. It proves the microbiome doesn't just, influence our passing moods. It literally dictates the physical, structural health of our cognitive centers.
Moving on to Section 2, the gut-brain connection, discovering your second brain. Now that we know this unbelievable transplant is actually a reality, let's zoom out a bit and investigate the biological how behind this whole phenomenon.
It all comes down to the gut-brain axis. This basically means your gut isn't just some simple digestive tube. No, it's a highly sophisticated second brain and a bustling chemical factory. This complex network allows for constant two-way dialogue between the enteric nervous system in your belly and the central nervous system up in your head. Think of it like this massive, high-speed biological superhighway. Traffic is constantly flowing in both directions, making sure the brain and the gut are always perfectly in sync. I mean, there are literally hundreds of millions of neurons embedded right there in the lining of your gut, just constantly firing status updates up to your brain.
If you take a look here, you can see how this clearly breaks down the 4 distinct communication highways your gut uses to talk to your brain. You've got the neural pathway, led by the vagus nerve, the endocrine system handling your stress hormones, the immune system regulating inflammation, and finally, the metabolic pathway. I really want you to take a close look at that bottom row in particular. Metabolic signaling involves these specific, tiny compounds created during digestion that directly impact your behavior and your memory. Honestly, that bottom row is exactly where our memory mystery really starts to unfold.
That leads us right into Section 3, how microbes shape memory, the VIP messengers. To solve this memory mystery, we need to zero in on that metabolic pathway and see exactly how microscopic organisms construct the literal building blocks of our cognition.
So meet the VIP messengers of your gut, short-chain fatty acids, or SCFAs for short. The main players we're talking about here are acetate, propionate, and butyrate. Now here's the catch. These compounds aren't something you just absorb passively from your environment. They are actively manufactured when your gut bacteria ferment the complex carbohydrates and dietary fiber you eat. We're talking foods like oats, legumes, and leafy greens. Humans actually lack the enzymes to digest this kind of fiber all on our own, so we literally outsource the job to our microbes. Without those microbes breaking down those specific foods, you simply wouldn't have these essential metabolic byproducts.
Following this microscopic journey, we can see how these SCFAs enter systemic circulation, cross the blood-brain barrier, and physically alter neurogenesis in the brain. Once they make that trek from the gut all the way up to the brain, notice how they influence microglial activity, dial down inflammatory signaling, and actively promote the creation of new neurons. They're basically acting like molecular keys, right? Unlocking the exact processes that keep your brain sharp and totally capable of storing new information.
Once they're in the brain, these microbial metabolites help regulate BDNF. You can really just think of BDNF as the essential fertilizer required for creating and retaining your memories. It's absolutely critical for neuroplasticity, which is your brain's ability to adapt, learn, and grow new connections. Without enough of this fertilizer, new memories are really going to struggle to take root. So by influencing BDNF levels through those short-chain fatty acids, your gut microbes are quite literally shaping the physical architecture of your memory. All right, section 4. When the balance breaks, the onset of dysbiosis. But what happens to our cognitive function when this delicate microbial factory is disrupted? Say by chronic stress, a lack of sleep, or just a consistently poor diet?
Let's compare the two states side by side. A healthy microbiome fuels the brain with soothing anti-inflammatory signals and vital neurotransmitters. It's working exactly as it should. But when things go wrong, we enter a state called dysbiosis. And dysbiosis leads to what we call leaky gut, which allows harsh, pro-inflammatory molecules to cross into the bloodstream and just wreak absolute havoc all the way up into the brain. Instead of fertilizer, the brain gets flooded with an inflammatory response. And this state of severe neuroinflammation, it perfectly explains the cognitive decline and that stark reduction in nerve cell growth we saw in the Alzheimer's transplant study earlier. The gut essentially hits a massive panic button that just halts memory formation in its tracks.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Feeding Your Second Brain, the Psychobiotic Solution. So knowing all this incredible biochemistry, how can we actually engineer this gut-brain connection to protect our memory and our cognitive future?
Let's look at how we can build a solid defense for your mind, step by step, using something called psychobiotics. These are targeted microbial interventions, like specific beneficial bacteria, that are actively used to improve mental health and cognition. By introducing these good bacteria, we can achieve 3 vital things. First, they regulate immunity by suppressing that dangerous inflammation we talked about. Second, they fortify and heal the gut lining to keep toxins out of the bloodstream, completely preventing that leaky gut scenario. And third, they ensure a steady modulation of neurotransmitters, effectively boosting the production of serotonin and that all-important BDNF fertilizer your hippocampus is so desperately craving.
And the best part? This isn't just some abstract theory. Real-world clinical trials show that feeding your gut bacteria with a fiber-rich Mediterranean diet or fermented foods directly improves cognitive scores and memory retention. We've seen studies observing older adults who incorporate olive oil, mixed nuts, and fermented foods, things like kefir, kimchi, or kombucha, and they've documented massively increased microbial diversity. What's truly incredible is that as a direct result of these dietary tweaks, these individuals showed measurable, highly significant improvements in short-term memory, sustained attention, and executive function compared to control groups. Think about that for a second. Their food is literally changing how well they think. Which leaves us with this final, kind of provocative thought to wrap up the explainer. Every single meal is a chance to cultivate your cognitive longevity. We now know without a shadow of a doubt that the bacteria in your digestive system hold the immense power to build, protect, or degrade your brain's architecture. Your memories aren't just securely locked away in your head. They are being actively cultivated deep in your gut. So, the next time you sit down to eat, maybe take a moment to remember exactly who and what you were feeding today.